Blessed day, girls, and welcome to the Under Her Eye podcast. I'm Jennie Gage of Life Take Two, an escaped Mormon trad wife here to spill the Mormon tea and shine a light on the patriarchy. And I am here with one of my favorite friends and fellow podcaster, Beth Magnetic of Death by Patriarchy. Blessed day, Beth.
Blessed day, sister. So, my name is Beth Magnetic, and I am here over on Death by Patriarchy. We talk about all of the things that are political. We talk about things that are religious, and we bring it all together to talk about what's causing death by patriarchy. So, Jennie, I am so excited for this episode.
Me too, because one of the reasons I'm excited is that normally Beth and I talk all the time. If anything ever hits the news, I will call Beth literally at 6 o'clock in the morning. If Kevin is still asleep beside me, then I will text her and we dialogue back and forth about all of the happenings. And Beth, in order to sequester the jury so that she can get the blind reaction from me, hasn't talked to me about what's going on in the Vallow Daybell case. And Beth, I'm just dying. So I have not turned on the news. I have scrolled past anything about her quotes. You were actually giving me the Lori quotes fresh today. So Beth and I are going to be diving into a little bit of what's been going on in this week's brand new Vallow Daybell case. Beth, do you want to catch us up just a little bit on exactly like why she's back in court, because she's already in jail, what this is all about, and then take it from there.
So in 2022, Vallow Daybell was convicted of conspiracy and murder of her two children, JJ and Tylee, as well as her current husband, Chad Daybell, his late wife, Tammy. Now, that was in Idaho, but before they went to Idaho and all that went down, there was also another alleged murder, which was of Charles Vallow, Lori Vallow's husband, before she moved to Idaho. So this one was positioned and is called as a self-defense. But then as things began to unfold, it became clear that that wasn't the case. So Lori was convicted of those three up in Idaho. So now she is down here in Arizona and she is her own defense. And so we are getting some Lori moments that we never have experienced before with this trial in particular. So she is here for the trial for the conspiracy to murder her late husband, Charles Vallow.
So Beth, right off the very top, when I first saw this unfolding in the news, I thought that it had to be a really bizarre coincidence for two people who had fallen in love and gotten married for, I think it was a second time for one and maybe a third for the other, but I could be wrong about that both of their spouses would die. What are the odds? It seemed suspect.
Charles was Lori's fourth husband, but Tammy was just Chad's first wife. So it's interesting for sure.
So Lori's had a few, but Chad, that was his first wife.
She's on number 5. Yeah, she's on number 5 now. It's a really interesting case, and you start to hear things about zombies and apocalypse and 144,000 and all sorts of crazy things with this case. However, the reality is all of these things have foundations in Mormonism, every last one.
So Beth, I have a bunch of friends that I've been talking to and followers and subscribers who have been chatting with me about everything Lori and how weird some of her stuff is. I think that Lori throws this because we expect for criminals, and especially criminals who harm children, we expect them to look a certain way. And I've talked about this on my channel. I've talked about this with reporters and other podcasters. We have this picture in mind of these types of bad guys. And then you see this sweet little Lori with her church girl voice walk into the room, and she has the long blonde hair and the big blue eyes and a smile on her face, and she's quoting scripture to us. And people have been asking me, why is this? What is the religious underpinnings of this? Is this just an anomaly, or did the religion have something to do with it? And as you and I dialogue about it a lot, before we decide to do an episode on any subject, whether it's Ruby Franke or Ted Bundy or anybody who has any type of connection to Mormonism, we run it through our litmus test of this question. Without the Mormon church, without the Mormon doctrine, would this have happened? And I just want our viewers to keep that in mind right now. I don't want to give my opinion on it. I want to hear what's going on in court this week from you. And I just want you to be thinking about that, because that's how we measure things. Of course, there are criminals who are Catholics and atheists and Buddhists and people who follow Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh. People all over the world commit crimes or don't commit crimes. And just because somebody's Catholic and they commit a crime doesn't mean that the Catholic Church is wrong or that Catholicism had anything to do with it. But there are instances where both religious doctrines, the community, and sometimes that community giving people access and also burying things, whether that's just the community itself or church leaders specifically, those things can both enhance crimes, escalate them, and sometimes even cause them.
So, in my opinion, what Mormonism does differently than any other religion is that it drives Americans to Christian nationalism. It drives Mormons to Christian nationalism in a way that that even just regular run-of-the-mill fundamentalist Christianity doesn't, because we have the Book of Mormon that claims a whole lot of Christian nationalist ideas. And so,
can you define Christian nationalism? Because I know that that's a real hot button topic. And when I left the Mormon church 6 years ago and just started watching the news and stuff and heard the word Christian nationalist, I had to kind of learn like a kindergartner, like, what do people mean by that? So can you just give us a definition? Like, when you're saying, and we're coming from the United States, America, what does Christian nationalism as an American mean to you?
So if you break it down, we have Christian as the first part of that, right? So it's people who believe in Jesus, believe in God. Does that make someone violent? Heck no. And then on the other side, we have somebody who is a nationalist. And this is the side where it starts to bring in danger. So we have a country that was born out of revolution. It was born out of violence. It continuously grows to hold its ground because of violence. And if you believe that your nation is the best, only, and most important place on the entire earth, you're willing to do literally anything to protect that. And so that's where we start to see a lot of violence come in. Now, you bring these things together, and then we believe that God and Jesus, exactly, they called this, they've made it and manifested this place to be able to be the place that is their place. And so now we don't only have this nationalistic approach to, it's my duty to protect this country. It's my duty to protect this country and my religion. And the only way that I can do that is through violence. And that's where we start to see some really wild things start to play out.
So I have to put on like my Mormon girly hat for just a minute and take the time machine back to prior to 2018. I wouldn't have thought that there's anything wrong with what you just said. And that would have been facts and truth to me. The Book of Mormon itself teaches that Heavenly Father kept America as a promised land. Like Adam and Eve were here. Jesus came to the Americas after he was resurrected so that he could bring his gospel back. And the Book of Mormon teaches that America was saved for these latter days for his gospel to be restored here. And it's kind of interesting that I just thought that that's what everybody thought. Like all Christians believe that America is a Christian nation, that it was preserved by God because there's religious freedom. And Mormon Jennie would have been like, yeah, like what's wrong with Christian nationalism?
This is the one true land, and it is our duty to protect the one true land, right? It's this really interesting thing. But yeah, I remember I would have seen that as a fact. It wouldn't have been an opinion, it would have been a fact that this was our duty and God was calling us to this. And I had been trained that, would you sacrifice your family member for this? Would you,
Yes.
if you had a life or death situation and you had to say that, I believe that this is true, would you in a life or death situation? Absolutely, right? This sounds really nice and faithful and devout on the surface, but when you get into crimes and the implications of this belief, it gets horrifying.
So take us down that path.
Yeah.
What happened with Lori?
Lori in particular. Lori started to believe because of Mormonism and Christianity. She believed that Jesus was going to return again. This is a belief in the Bible. This is a belief in Mormonism. However, because of some of the flavors of Mormonism, it gets a little dicier than your average Christian religion. But they started to talk about the 144,000, which we typically think of the Jehovah's Witnesses.
Jehovah's Witness. Mm-hmm.
When you hear 144,000, right? However, if you go into the Doctrine and Covenants, it does talk about gathering the 144,000 leading up to Jesus' return. And so Lori, as an A+ Mormon, right? She was not going to be settling for a C's get degrees kind of attitude when it came to her Mormonism. She knows this. She knows that it talks about the 144,000 leading up to Christ's return. She knows that it talks about the Church of the Firstborn. She knows that it talks about how if a spouse does not agree with polygamy, that spouse will be destroyed. She knows all of these things that are in Mormon doctrine that most Mormons either don't know or they don't believe literally.
Beth, I would say that Mormonism isn't a church. It's a spectrum. And having been in Mormonism, and I used to put it as there's 31 flavors of Mormonism, like Baskin-Robbins. But then I started to think I don't want Baskin-Robbins to sue me for correlating their brand with something that I'm actually using in a kind of a negative light. It's a spectrum. And you can be a go to church a couple times a year inactive Mormon who has maybe never read the Book of Mormon and just really loves like going over to church or going over to dinner after church at your grandma's house and enjoys the primary songs and sitting down and hearing a good sacrament service once in a while. You can be that type of a Mormon. Yeah. And all the way to you are Lori Vallow or the prophet of the Mormon church and everything in between. I was really high up on that spectrum. Also some similarities to Lori Vallow, which is why she fascinates me. I had a near-death experience, which I took as a supernatural sign from God at the time. I no longer do. I was a temple worker, so I had access to things like little devotionals at the beginning of our temple shifts where I was receiving personal revelation from the temple president and members of the presidency. There were like the higher law, in-depth type of stuff that the regular members didn't hear. And I'm very studious, so I was constantly going to Deseret Book, buying the latest whatever I could, and then also getting things that were out of print off of my granddad's shelf, diving into topics like Jesus being a polygamist. In the book, Jesus Was Married, which there's a whole branch of Mormons that believe in that. Diving into some Second Coming books. I personally read Visions of Glory multiple times after having a near-death experience, which Lori's favorite book. I don't know if they let her have it in the nightstand in jail or not, but there's certainly a spectrum. Not every Mormon dives into the things and actually reads the scriptures and thinks, what if everything in here is true? What if everything is true? Most of us walk away and we're just like, families are forever. And like, I'm going to wear my garment and I'm going to go to church on Sunday. But we don't dive into things like zombies, apocalypse, end of days, prepping.
So one of the things that I find so fascinating is, as an ex-Mormon content creator, which I'm moving out of that space, but I will always have something to say on it. But I am so fascinated by the Mormons who come into my comments and I can literally show them the source for where X, Y, and Z comes from. And even with showing them, hey, this is where this idea comes from and it's your scriptures, they will still argue and deny that that's what Mormons believe. And so it's like you can literally have Mormons who you can show them what their scriptures say and they still don't believe that that's what they believe.
Because they're over on this end of the spectrum where they've never read those scriptures before.
Right.
And they don't know. They truly don't know. There's so much to know in Mormonism. Mormonism is a spectrum, and not everybody is in the same depth of the spectrum that Lori and Chad Daybell were.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have a chart where I show the umbrella of Mormonism, and I show that there's the liberal and the Jack Mormons on one side, then there's the LDS folks, and then there's the radicalized folks. And that's where we see a lot of the people who are at these Preparing a People events. But over on the furthest side, we have our fundamentalists and extremists. And murder puts you in the extremist category. The bells are there.
Do we have to say that? Captain Obvious?
Right.
Yeah. But it doesn't
that's
necessarily put you outside of Mormon doctrine. And I think that we're going to dive into that because, again, putting on my Mormon girly hat, I grappled with, when's it okay to either lose my life, which I covenanted to do in the temple, or to take somebody's life? Like, when will I have to do that? And I grappled with this when I was like a 12, 16-year-old, 21-year-old girl, because the scriptures,
absolutely,
they say that's going to happen. So what happened and what's going on right now? And please get to the part where you tell me what Lori said this week that relates to Laban, because I'm dying.
So she didn't say it about Laban. It's relevant.
Okay.
So
I wouldn't let anybody else tell me. I was saving myself for you. So
thank you. So there have been 3 interviews basically in just the last week and a half that I thought were really interesting in the Mormon aspect of it all. So first off, with True Crime Arizona on the Arizona Family Station channel on YouTube, you can see Lori was interviewed right before the trial began. So if you want to bring the screen up on stage, we will start watching that. This has some interesting things.
Are you prepared for a life behind bars? Sure. How? What do you do to prepare that to be the rest of your life? My life is mostly over because I'm 51 years old. I'm a mother and a grandmother and all those things. I've had a wonderful life. I did have a wonderful life for a long time. It's just a different life, you know. When my faith were called on missions to go do things. And I've had this kind of scenario in my mind that I was like, if my bishop called me in and said, we have this really hard calling for you. It's going to be for the rest of your life. And you're going to go into this prison and where all these women are, and you're going to help and uplift and strengthen women and give them faith and help them carry on and do these things and help them get ready for when they get out of prison. But you're going to be there all the time and you're going to be there for the rest of your life. Will you accept this calling? Would you say yes? Absolutely. So you feel.
So you can pull that off the screen for right now. So, Jennie, what are your thoughts there?
Okay. I can see why everybody was like, have you seen this? Again, it gets into that zone where we're so confused because we're not looking at Manson here. We're not looking at some crazy raging roid rage lunatic. We're looking at this church girl talking about how Heavenly Father has called her to prison. And it's mind-boggling because it's something that we shouldn't see. If you saw her and didn't know that she had unalived her children, then you would know that.
Absolutely. And I think one of the really interesting things with her saying that is she feels like she was called to do the work that she did, which was unaliving 4 different members, arguably 6 different people, maybe even 7. But she did feel called to this. She does believe that God asked her to do something incredibly hard and that she's here because she did what God asked her to do.
So did Ruby Franke. So did Jody Hildebrand. So did
Ron and Dan
Meadows massacre people. So did the Laffertys. So did John Day, is somewhere in my family history, who was behind the Mountain Meadows massacre. And he believed what the Book of Mormon says, that we're supposed to fight against evil. And so convinced was he of that he perpetrated one of the greatest, migrational tragedies, arguably, in American history.
Absolutely. I could sit here and list names for several minutes and just give a little taste of all sorts of stories. But yeah, this is the reality, is that these people believe that God has called and asked them to do this thing. And that's where we're at.
Can I share just a little girl thing, just because we are a girl channel? I had a bunch of people asking me about Lori Vallow's appearance because her hair is curled and she has makeup on. And there's not curling irons or cosmetics in prison. They have this little prison shop that people can buy you points for. And where Lori has been, there was no access to any type of personal care products like cosmetics. They just get the bar soap and the shampoo in the shower. But in this Arizona prison that she's in for this trial, they actually have, I can't think of the name. I should have had it in front of me, but it's like a little prison gift shop. people can buy you points. And so she does have some cosmetics, but in the past, when she didn't have access to that, she was using like food from the cafeteria. Like she would save a little bit of grape juice. She said that she's used candy as makeup. I don't know, maybe licorice or Jolly Ranchers to like lipstick and eyeliner and things like that. And I guess in prison, a lot of the girlies will cut up a towel or a sheet and then they do like the wrap their hair. So it looks to me that that's kind of what Lori's done. So nobody is styling her for the camera and she doesn't have access to a triple barrel or anything like that. It's torn up bed sheets or towels on wet hair and a little bit of stuff that people from the dispensary have given her. Also, she's 51 and so am I. And she looks
Her
rough.
life is, the fact that she's
Her
saying,
life
I'm
is
51
almost
and my life is
over.
almost over. My life's over anyways.
I hope I have 50 more years.
The thing is that when you're a Mormon woman, your life is getting married, having kids, right? And so that's over for her. So life is over. So isn't that fascinating? She has that mindset.
I feel like that would be a good branch off podcast. We should do a little Beth and Jennie mini on that because that would be an interesting side note is your life is over after the children go away. Yeah. Okay. So that was jarring.
Yes.
What next?
All right. So go ahead and pull us back up on the screen. All right. So this is the prosecution's opening statement. So the state of Arizona, it's probably about 4 minutes, but trust me, it's worth it.
So I'm going to need you to stay close to me the next couple days. Mel, too. She can't go to Utah. They're planking some kind of intervention, but want Mel out of the way, so I'm left alone. I need to come get the stuff at your house tomorrow and secure it. Lots to do. Thanks for standing by me. It's all coming to a head this week. I will be like Nephi, I am told. And so will you. Lori Daybell, the woman seated over here, wrote this to her brother, Alex Cobbs, on July 9th of 2019, 2 days before they killed Charles Vallow. But to understand why this is so meaningful, why this is relevant, you have to understand the context. So let's talk about it. In July 2019, Lori Vallow was married to Charles Vallow. Lori Vallow lived here in Arizona, Chandler. Charles Vallow lived in Texas. In July of 2019, Lori Daybell was Lori Vallow, married to Charles Vallow. In July of 2019,
can you put on pause for just a sec? I just want to ask a couple questions really quick because I know that you know a lot of details behind this, and I haven't researched the marriage to Charles Vallow, but I have had some of his family reach out to me on my social medias and tell me that they hate that she uses the name Lori Vallow Daybell. And somebody in the family said, would you please just refer to her as Lori Daybell? And I still refer to her as Lori Vallow Daybell because that is her legal name. And apparently the family is deeply hurt and angry, obviously, over everything that went down. So a question that I have, and maybe she'll get into this here, but maybe she won't, is how long was Lori married to Charles? Do you know what the length of their marriage was?
13 years.
So do they have, some of the children were theirs then?
JJ, they adopted together.
JJ, they adopted together. Yep. Okay, so 13 years. And if Lori was in her 40s, so they had spent a significant amount of time together. This wasn't just like a brand new relationship. Yeah. And then do you know how she met Chad Daybell? Do you know anything about that?
So she went to a Preparing a People event up in, I believe it was St. George, Utah.
Jesus. No, not the Preparing the People event. Oh, no.
Yep. And then the next one, he came down. I think he stayed at her house while Charles was gone. A bunch of people stayed at her house. He was one of the people that did. And anyway, they definitely, there's some really saucy and interesting literature from this point in time between them.
Okay. Thank you. Carry on.
You're welcome.
Lori Vallow wanted to be Lori Daybell, wife of Chad Daybell. And in July of 2019, Lori Vallow wanted to keep the same lifestyle that she had with Charles. And she could get all of this if Charles was dead. She could marry Chad Daybell and become Lori Daybell. She would get $1 million life insurance policy from Charles Vallow. She would get Social Security for herself and their son, JJ, as a child of a dead spouse. And all of this would be true if Charles Vallow was dead. So what about Nephi? Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell, and Alex Cox all believed that those who disagreed with them were dark, possessed by evil spirits, sometimes called Z's or zombies. Sometimes they've had names for these evil spirits like Ned. Lori, Chad, and Alex used religion, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and a story of Nephi, a prophet, who was directed by the Holy Spirit to
Wait, pause.
Laban.
Okay, I just heard that little teeny bit, but I just want to say, before we hear what she says is the story of Laban and Nephi, what I learned my whole entire life growing up, for any of the non-Mormon viewers that are watching this, in the Book of Mormon, there's a story of a man named Nephi, and he's sent to retrieve some records so that his family can put them in a giant ship and take them from Jerusalem to America, to the Americas, what would become the Americas. And we're talking 600 AD. And I actually pulled this up today. So I learned this from the time I was like a 5, 6, 7-year-old girl. We would sing songs about the Lord commanded Nephi to go and get the plates.
I had blocked that out, Jennie, until right now.
From the wicked Laban outside the city gates. And this song, I taught that to my children. I taught that as a primary president to children as young as 3 and probably even younger in the nursery. And I knew as a young child exactly what Nephi had done. Nephi needed to get this record. So he goes into the city. His uncle says, no, I'm not going to give you the plates, these brass plates that contained the scriptural history that Lord had commanded them to take across the sea with them. And so, they tried to bribe him. They gave him money, and Laban says, no. So then Nephi goes back one evening to just see if there's another way that he can get the plates. And he finds Laban stone cold, passed out, drunk in the middle of the street. And this was a scripture story from the Book of Mormon that they would read to us as primary children, very young, 3, 4, 6 years old. And then, can I just read this straight from here?
Please.
We're looking at First Nephi, and if you don't have a Book of Mormon, please call the missionaries, get one, go to Deseret Industries, find a friend with the Book of Mormon so that you guys can see these atrocious things that Lori Daybell was reading. First Nephi 4:12. Oh, I need my ground glasses. So he finds Laban passed out in the street, and Nephi says, and it came to pass that the Spirit said unto me, slay him, for the Lord hath delivered him into thy hands. Behold, and this is the important bit that they would teach us in seminary. You need to remember this part right here. This is why that murder was justified. It was a holy murder. It was not a sin. Behold, the Lord slayeth the wicked to bring forth his righteous purposes. It is better that one man should perish than that a nation should dwindle and perish in unbelief. And now when I, Nephi, had heard these words from the Spirit, I remembered the words of the Lord, which he spake unto me in the wilderness, saying that inasmuch as thy seed shall keep my commandments, blah, blah, blah. So he needs the scriptures. So he takes his sword and he slays him. And then he puts on his clothes and he escapes with the records that he has just stolen. And I used to grapple with this even as a young girl growing up. Is there ever going to be a time when the Spirit is going to tell me that somebody around me needs to be slain? I never thought that was wrong. And I would not think that that was wrong today if I hadn't left the Mormon Church in October of 2018. And that was something that as I deconstructed the fact that I had been radicalized from elementary school, from preschool, that there are some times when it's okay to unalive another human being. When I started to deconstruct that, it blew my mind. So let's see what she says about Nephi, because I just wanted to show that as a Mormon girly, I know exactly where she's going.
Context. While we're here, what you said about slaying the wicked for a righteous cause or whatever it was, right? That's exactly what they think they did, right? And so they, for the Lord's purpose, so they believed that Charles had been overtaken by a demonic spirit and that he was possessed, and that they were going to have to slay this wicked man to make it so that they could save the world and gather the 144,000.
And Beth,
I know
before you play this, can I just say that I believed 100% in demonic possession. When I found out that Jake had been cheating on me, I had our bishop lay hands on him to do an exorcism, because I believed that I could feel evil spirits around him. And I believed that he was evil and that he may potentially lose his life because God in some way would take him out. I believed with all of my heart in demonic possession. I actually have a story from my own life where when I felt like a demon had entered me, I had had a weird dream. And this is not something that, if you're on the end of the spectrum, as I was, as a temple-going, faithful member of the church, and you read your scriptures, the scriptures teach of demonic possession. I believed it 100%. And I don't think that Lori and Chad are being disingenuous about their beliefs. I don't think that they're just using faith to cover up these things that they did. I think that they were actually genuinely led by these wackadoodle beliefs to do the things that they did, just in the same way that Ruby and Lori were.
The first miracle of the Mormon church. So basically they left when they got the 6 people baptized to start the church. And then Newell K. Knight, I believe it was, he became possessed by a demon. And Joseph Smith went and cast out the demon. That was the first miracle of the Mormon church. Most members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints do not know that, right? Mm-hmm. And so that context and that knowledge is something that Chad and Lori had. But so to claim that this comes from outside of Mormonism is so crazy, because it's right there if you actually know the history. So anyway.
Interesting. Okay, let's see where she's going to go.
To obtain brass plates and secure the long-term prosperity of Nephi's descendants. Lori used this religion and the story of Nephi as justification to kill Charles Vallow, just like Nephi killed Laban. On July 9th of 2019, Lori Vallow invoked Nephi when she messaged Alex to provide them with that religious authority to kill Charles. After months of trying to get rid of him, they were finally ready to be like Nephi.
So that was where that one ended.
Do you remember the words? Could you sing it with me? Bum, bum, bum. The Lord commanded Nephi to go and get the plates
from the
wicked Laban outside the city gates. And yeah, and then that song, the chorus of that is, I will go, I will do the things the Lord commands. I know the Lord provides a way. He wants me to obey. This was one of my favorite childhood songs.
Same.
I don't think it came out until I was older, but this was and as a primary president, this was one of my favorite. The kids loved this song. And this verse of this song, which I don't care if the church that, Lori and all these people, they are not, it's not the church that made them do this. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, somebody in the top echelons of Mormonism, approve every hymn, both the adult hymns, the children's hymns, and they approved that specific verse, which talks about a man who murders his uncle. Because I will do the things the Lord commands. I know the Lord provides a way. He wants me to obey. And I grappled with that my whole entire life. When is that time? Is there a time when I'm going to have to do that?
Absolutely.
I don't even know how to use a sword.
Right. Absolutely. And yeah, will you do whatever the Lord asks of you? There's 100 hymns that have that sentiment echoed throughout Mormonism. So to act like this was like some crazy thing for them, to believe that they received a calling and inspiration through personal revelation from God, which is so uniquely Mormon, to deny that this falls under that umbrella of Mormonism is so wild to me.
Beth, I can't believe they're talking about Nephi and Laban, and I feel so seen as a former Mormon girly, like in
I
ways
know.
that I've never been seen before.
So I'm right there with you. As soon as I heard that, I was like, oh, they're actually going to talk about it this time, because the state of Idaho pretended that they're like, these are not the droids you're looking for, kind of a situation where they're like, this is not Mormonism. Pretend this is not Mormonism, right? So they completely ignored it in the Idaho trial. So here in Arizona, they are not shying away from it. And one of the things that's come up over and over is the state of Arizona will ask members of the church on the stand, is this what you understood your religion to teach or whatever? And so the members are like, oh, no, absolutely not. She was going to be a translated being. No, we don't believe in that.
Wait, I always wanted to be translated, because if you get translated, you don't have to die.
Right.
So yeah, like I always wanted to be translated, to not die, to just be resurrected while still in the flesh.
Absolutely.
Again, they're on an end of the spectrum where they just haven't dug deep into the scriptures. And
Right.
Lori Vallow, like she's digging every day.
Yep, exactly. So with that context, it's important to note that people are saying constantly that Lori was practicing something outside of the teachings of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This woman, Serena Sharp, she had been around Lori just a handful of times, but in those handful of times, she said that she heard Lori talk about zombies. She participated in one of these casting out circles, that type of thing. And so Lori, this is the thing. I need everybody to understand. I think that Lori is a murderer. I think she is a terrible person. I think she did the most horrific things on the planet. And if I were to say that I didn't fist bump the second she asked this question in her cross-examination, I would be lying. But anyway, you can pull us back up on the screen.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Miss Sharp, who are the three Nephites in the Book of Mormon? The three Nephites? I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. The third Nephi, 28, the three Nephites, do you know who they are? Off the top of my head, no. You do not know who they are? No, not off the top of my head. Okay. In the Bible, do you know of John the Revelator? Yes. Do you know of John the Revelator being translated? I don't remember that, but you don't remember that? What about in the Old Testament, Elijah? Was he translated? Your Honor, I'm going to object to relevance.
What's the relevance?
I've been accused of being out of the scope of the LDS religion when this is exactly in the scope of the LDS religion.
So I'll allow it.
Yes, I believe so. Okay. But you don't know that John the Revelator was translated as well? I can't remember. And then the three Nephites in the Book of Mormon, they're translated as well? No, there were three. You asked me their names. I don't remember that. I wasn't asking their names. I said, do you know who they are? As in, are you aware of them? I'm sorry. I'll be more specific. Are you aware of the three Nephites in the Book of Mormon? Yes. That they were translated? Yes. So is it fair to say that that is uncommon in the Christian belief system, to believe in people being translated? I don't know if I'm qualified to answer that question for all of Christianity. Okay. Are you a Christian that believes in the Bible? Yes. Object, Your Honor, to relevance.
I'll allow it briefly, but hurry up and make your point.
Yes, I believe in the Bible. Of course.
And Elijah in the Bible was translated, right?
Yes.
And you believe in that, right?
Yes.
And you're a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Is that correct? Correct. So that would not be out of the scope of what you believe. That's why I'm asking. Correct. Okay. That's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
You could pull it off the screen.
No way.
Right.
Beth, I feel so seen and understood. So I don't know if that
By
woman like
Lori
never went to,
Daybell.
yeah. So I think that we need to title this episode Lori Daybell Was a Good Mormon.
Absolutely.
Like she
was a
literally
devout
believed
Mormon.
she was literally a Mormon. She wasn't just
Exactly.
like I just like to go to church. She was literally a Mormon. Like she just lifted the doctrine and did what it said.
Totally. I remember as a believer being asked the question, do you have the faith that the things that you read about in the scriptures could happen in today's day and age? Do you have the faith and the belief system to be able to know that you could be translated just like the three Nephites? Do you remember being asked questions like that?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Yeah, right. The reality is that she, just like everybody in the class, would have said, oh yeah, I totally believe that could have happened. She actually believed it, right?
She was like, I'm going to make it happen.
Exactly. And so she read the scriptures. She read all of this Mormon doctrine. And she said, Lord, I will go and I will do the things the Lord commands.
Just for our non-Mormon viewers, the three Nephites is a story from the Book of Mormon when Jesus floats down to the Americas after his resurrection. And he has, instead of the 12 apostles over in Jerusalem, he has the 12 disciples here in America. And there are three of them, whoever wrote the Book of Mormon, they basically just lifted the story of the Bible and they just stuck it in the Americas. And we're like, John the Beloved in the Bible was like, Lord, I never want a taste of death. I want to live forever until I see the final wrapping up scenes of the earth. I believed as a Mormon that John had instantly been changed into this celestial being so that he could walk the earth forever, like a vampire, like in Twilight. Like when, what's his face, finally bites Bella on the neck and she becomes a vampire.
I've never watched it or read it.
What? No way. I grew up in Stephanie Meyer's ward. Stephanie Meyer you're younger than me. I went to church with Stephanie.
I was a Dracula fan and I started reading Twilight and I got to the page where it said that like his skin sparkled like diamonds in the sun or whatever. I read that sentence and I shut that book and I've never gone back.
Maybe you should read it. So just like that, in the Book of Mormon, 3 of the 12 disciples are like, Lord, Lord, what we ask of you is that we, like your beloved John, get to stay on earth forever until the final like Armageddon and like the end of everything. So they are translated beings. So they never tasted death, just like Twilight. Like they're just like Bella. They're like changed into like eternal beings. And there were all these 3 Nephite stories back in the day. And I fully believed that at some point that I might run into the 3 Nephites. Like I remember in seminary, somebody being like, yeah, we're like on a vacation. We're coming home from like Disneyland to Paradise Valley. And like our car broke down and this truck pulled over and there were these 3 guys in it. And they just like for free helped us repair our like radiator so we could get on the way again. And we're all like, oh, it was the 3 Nephites. Everything was always the 3 Nephites. And I always just fully thought that like the current prophet of the church, when I was growing up with Spencer W. Kimball, I assumed that like he knew where the 3 Nephites were. That like if you're called as a prophet, automatically Heavenly Father is like, Brother Kimball, my son, now that we have this open line of communication because the mantle has been placed on you, there's a couple things I need to tell you. I'm going to give you the like GPS coordinates for like now the 3 Nephites are going to like location share with you because you're the prophet. 100% I believed that with all of my heart until I left the church in 2018.
Yeah.
So translated beings, absolutely. Who is this woman on the stand? Who is she?
She was just at some events and she stayed at Lori's house. She didn't know Lori or anything when she did that, but she was at some events and she got brought places where they were doing the casting out circles and that type of thing. So she was around Lori like 3 times. So she was a witness of
Well, I'm
whether
gonna call-
Lori.
I'm going to call bullshit on her whole testimony, because if she doesn't know about the 3 Nephites and translated beings, then she has never gone to Mormon church and clearly not a seminary graduate. So I just don't
Right.
think that she was even half as righteous as we were, Beth. She's on the other end of the
I know.
spectrum.
Right.
Just saying.
Yeah. Yeah. The fact that she was like, can't remember whether these characters were translated or not. I'm like, girl,
Yes.
it makes me so crazy. And this is what we run into all the time, is these people who don't know their damn scriptures telling us that we are lying. Oh, drives me nuts. Anyway, that's it, Jenny. These are the 3 highlights from the last about week. So I'll let you know what
But worth
else.
the wait.
Right. I'll let you know. Guys, let us know if you want us to do this week by week. I don't know that it's going to be very long. They're already through 12 people or something. So,
And if you have any questions that you'd like us to address, then drop those in the comments. We will be hanging out in the comments to talk about whatever you want to talk about. And I want to end this with, Beth, you talked to Lori Vallow Daybell here not too long ago and had your own interview with her.
yeah. So we emailed.
In prison, you
so-
can't just call everybody you want to. Okay. So
No.
you interviewed her via email back and forth.
So we chatted a little bit about email, and I wanted to talk to her about a few certain issues. One is that they're trying to pass certain laws here in Arizona that I think JJ's story would be incredibly relevant to. I wanted to talk with her about that. But I also wanted to let her know, hey, you know what? I just want you to know that everybody out here is saying that you made this up. And there are some of us out here who know that you didn't make this up, that you just actually believed what Joseph Smith and Brigham Young taught in ways that everybody else doesn't. She was very hesitant to talk to me about anything at all because I have true crime
Yep.
attached to my name. We had a little bit of back and forth.
Oh, so interesting. All right. So I feel like we should do a follow-up video this week about some of the weirdest things that we did in our lives because, like, the Mormon church told us to. That'd be really interesting. Like, one that comes to mind is I stopped treatment for my ovarian tumor because the patriarch gave me like a priesthood blessing and told me that I was going to be healed and that I didn't need to see my doctors anymore. So in about 2 or 3 years without seeing my doctors, that was a weird one that came to mind. I bet that we could have a pretty fun little, although like there's a bunch of stories that I'd be telling myself that make me look stupid. And sometimes I hate to rat out Mormon Jennie because Mormon Jennie, just like Lori, I don't know. I believed in some wackadoodle stuff too. So, Beth, here's what we do have coming up this week. You and Julia are gonna do a little mini here about a topic that I saw in the text thread.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what it was now that we're talking.
And then I have an episode for the podcast here that Julie and I have done that I don't know if you're aware of, Beth, but we've dug into the Mormon concept of Heavenly Mother and what it means to be a woman in the celestial kingdom according to Mormon doctrine. And I have to tell you, prepping for this episode was actually wild because I haven't thought about Heavenly Mother for the past 6.5 years and didn't realize how much the Mormon church does women dirty. Like,
so dirty.
Thinking about the fact that I used to try really hard to be good and righteous so I could die and go to the celestial kingdom so that I could be an eternal breeder for
Nameless.
in a
Nameless breeder.
Nameless breeder. No, I had a new name. It was a nameless. I had a new name. But to me in the temple, it was Abish.
But your children would never know your
my
name.
earth children
right?
would never know my name. The Mormon church did me dirty, and this is something that I've never really deconstructed until Julie and I started show prepping and writing a script. And I was literally like pissed for days just thinking I worked so hard to be so righteous, and that was my future. That episode is coming up here.
And then the other episode that we couldn't remember, we are going to be talking about the church hiding blood atonement.
Ooh. Okay. Because, we're not going to give any spoilers. You guys, thank you for watching and thank you for being here on our baby channel. Please subscribe and please find Beth over at Death by Patriarchy. I am at Life Take 2 and we will see you later.
May the Lord close